talked about how moving plants overseas would just, in other words, we have regulations here, they don't have them overseas. The temptation by some would be to have some kind of international regulatory agency in that situation. Has there been any talk of trying to include the United States in such an agency by the Obama administration or anyone else? And how would you feel about something like that?
Well, first, Dr. Boustany mentioned that India has already said, we ain't doing it.
China isn't either.
China isn't either. The second thing is, the people who are proposing this said, wait a second, we will put a WTO-approved tariff on refined petroleum products entering into the United States. But what that ignores is that at ExxonMobil, they make all this proprietary stuff, which is high value added, and they ship that overseas. And so ExxonMobil will not, they will be taxed on that here, at least on the inputs. They'll be taxed on the inputs and maybe on the outputs, and then they will have to compete overseas with something which bears that tax. If ExxonMobil moves that to a country like India or China, they will take their high value added material and ship it overseas without the tax that we've just employed. And so what happens, the guys working and the gals working at ExxonMobil to make that have lost their jobs. So I think it's counterproductive to our job market, even with these tariffs proposed to supposedly protect us against those countries that don't employ cap and trade.
I'm wondering if anyone in this room has given any thought to possible opportunities for the state. It says in the study that the state has an abundance of biomass that could be used to produce green power, but the conventional power price is not high enough to motivate investors to go into that. Well, if what you're saying is that this will raise the price of conventional energy, which changes the equation for those investors. And I'm just wondering if anyone is looking at.
Well, here's the problem. If you raise the price of current energy and you don't have the alternatives in place to meet the needs, then we're leaving ourselves with a real problem. That's why you need a transition strategy. And the transition strategy in energy is starting off with natural gas usage for multiple things, whether for transportation fuel, for generation of electricity, for feedstock, for our chemical industry. As we develop these newer sources, third and fourth generation biofuels, biomass, and so forth. And so in the absence of a transition strategy, and in the absence of what's needed for future energy needs, and our energy needs are going to grow, not shrink, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot. That's why you have to have a sensible energy policy that first and foremost doesn't punish our current energy production and hurt our economy. You've heard from these small business owners. You know what's going to happen to our energy producers, our independent companies and service companies that are the backbone of this state, backbone of Texas and other Gulf Coast states. So you have to have a sensible energy policy to begin with. And we all want to see the research and development spurred forward on these new things. And Louisiana's in a great position. I've met with the Biofuels Coalition, and they're very excited about prospects in Louisiana. Their biggest problem is finding capital to expand from a research stage to full production. And if we can come up with loan guarantees and those kinds of things that spur their industrial development, then that will create jobs and diversify our energy economy, and that's where we want to go. But a lot of that capital is going to come from our conventional energy industry. British Petroleum's already investing in companies here, biofuel companies here in the state of Louisiana. ExxonMobil is also doing so. And so they need our current refining capacity and that expertise. So it's a win-win situation. And that's why those who propose punishing our current industry in the hopes of having something in the future really do understand realistically what needs to be done.
If I may address that as well, I think Louisiana is already somewhat seizing this opportunity. There's a biodiesel plant down in, I think, St. Gabriel that I gather takes chicken fat from the farms around, takes it down the Mississippi, and uses it to make a no-sulfur diesel product. Clico just started a power plant, I think it's Clico, in which they have the ability to burn tires, biomass, as well as coal. And so folks are kind of preparing for this. But the second way we can really benefit is that natural gas has a much lower carbon footprint relative to BTU compared to coal or oil. If we can begin transitioning from an economy that spends $800 billion a year bringing oil from countries that oftentimes hate us, and substituting for that natural gas, which we produce here in particularly Louisiana, then we can, one, lower our carbon footprint, but also establish more energy security. So I think that the natural gas transition is something which has great potential to benefit our state and our nation, as well as address some of the concerns about carbon that many people have.
Well, why, if natural gas has a lower carbon footprint, why is it such a problem under the cap and trade regime? Is it just the incentives are skewed?
A couple things. Charlie, you want to address it first? Or?
No, go ahead.
You know, one, there's a prejudice against fossil fuel. I will say that folks in Washington view coal, oil, natural gas kind of the same. Now, there's some who are more sophisticated than that. The Sierra Club nationally, for example, has endorsed natural gas as a substitute fuel for coal. Now, by the way, Pat Felder spoke about how she uses so much natural gas, she's concerned about a spike in fuel costs. So the one thing that's allowed natural gas to enter the discussion is the discovery of the Barnett, the Haynesville, and the Marcellus shale plays, which give folks like Pat a stable natural gas price going out, as opposed to one that spikes, goes down, spikes, and goes down. It's only the certainty of price with natural gas that has allowed this conversation to take place.
Well, and the other thing that happens with this, if a cap and trade regime is proposed, this is going to be on top of additional proposals by the Obama administration to currently tax our independent current oil and gas production. The Obama budget has $40 billion in new taxes that will be imposed on our current independent companies who are producing gas. And in fact, if you talk to any company today that's making the play in Haynesville shale, they'll tell you that if just that $40 billion tax increase over 10 years is imposed, a company that does perhaps maybe drills 10 gas wells might drill only one or maybe none. And so this again is a lack of understanding on the part of this administration and upon the leadership of Congress to understand what really drives our energy industry, our energy economy. And so we've been trying, we had a hearing on this last week in our committee that went all day, and I pointed out the difference between oil production and gas production, and the fact that these tax increases, particularly on gas production, will be severely detrimental to the development of natural gas as the transition fuel that moves us forward in the 21st century.
I got a question inside Louisiana News. Just prior to the economic turmoil that we had, we saw gas prices reaching over $4 a gallon. Barrels of oil was at $147 before it collapsed, and of course we had the economic struggles that we had. Would we see something similar if through the cap and trades? If we pass cap and trade, would we see a similar result? Or how do you think would that?
The stated goal is to increase the cost of fossil fuel. Cap and trade's goal is to increase that cost. And so the degree that you increase is the degree that you can mitigate that effect through conservation or substitution for substitution with other fuel sources.
I fully agree. I think cap and trade is clearly a tax on fossil fuels, on carbon, and you're going to see a significant price spike in oil, gas, natural gas, gasoline, and diesel. And this is going to disproportionately hurt small business owners and those on fixed income. And in fact, there's one cap and trade proposal circulating around in the Senate that would basically take the money generated from cap and trade and use it to help people pay for the increased price that they're going to pay for electricity or at the pump. And so that's an admission that they're going to raise costs for everybody across the board. This is an example of the federal government trying to pick winners and losers in the energy economy rather than coming up with a sensible 21st century energy strategy that meets our needs and makes our country competitive.